Maybe you can talk a little on what Guru Maharaj talked about the elimination and acceptance.
About the what?
Elimination and acceptance.
Elimination and acceptance?
Yes. Progress means elimination and acceptance. Maybe you can expand a bit more on what he...
I can't, I understand the topic, but I can't hear you very well. You sound like you're in an echo chamber.
Maybe our camera is too far away. 1 second. It's a TV. It's not a very good, I don't know what's happening with this. We need to get probably a better, I don't know, camera or something. Let's see. ¿Puedes acercarte un poquito para allá? Is it better? Can you hear better?
Marginally better.
Ahora no te ves. A ver, ponte para allá un poquito. Para acá.
Devashis, you know the difference between the terms connotation and denotation, as Guru Maharaj put it, right?
Yeah.
Can you say that?
Yeah. As one increases, the other decreases, isn't it?
Yeah, but like the one that if there are just a few diamonds, so they're very valuable because they're scarce. Now that is denotation, right? Or not?
Yeah. Connotation means in the, that to describe something in a general way, not like more non-specific way. And denotation means when you actually home in on what the substance is.
Well, yeah, that may be the specific use of the terms. In general, in more literary terms, though, denotation means the meaning of a word, and connotation refers to what it connotes. Like, for instance, the word you'll see in many of the scriptures we read, they use the word, for instance, cult, like the Chaitanya cult or this cult,
Right.
that, and that it is related to culture, cult. It has in terms of spiritual religious use, it has a good meaning. But when you bring in the connotation of the word cult,
right,
then it has a very bad meaning, because they're always talking about cults and what the word connotes. So as far as I understand Guru Maharaj's use of the word denotation and connotation, he says there's denotation increases, connotation decreases as connotation increases, denotation diminishes as the connotation increases. So
right.
As far as I understand, you could say the denotation of a diamond is there are just a few diamonds, so they're very very valuable. But the connotation is when you can have something that looks like a diamond, many pieces of artificial jewelry, glass cut to look like a diamond, then because there's many of them, then naturally the value decreases.
Yeah.
So something like that. So there is a relationship. And so we're concerned not, for instance, one time I remember one person who's came to see Srila Govinda Maharaj. Actually, it was Paramadwaiti Swami, and he
Yeah.
wanted Govinda Maharaj to be the chairman of his World Vaishnava Association.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he said, we're trying to have a group of harmonious group of universal group of Vaishnavas from all the different mats and everything. And then Govinda Maharaj said, well, Guru Maharaj's line is very particular. He said, we don't do anything so much the same as other mats. For instance, we have our own arti, our own prayers that we sing to the deities that are unique to the Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat. He said there are many things that Guru Maharaj introduced that are specific to the Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat, and we want to maintain the purity of that line. So
Right.
we're not interested in some homogeneous like stew or broth of so many different Vaishnavas where they're all conceptions, because then when you have many, you seek what is called the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Just like when you have many fractions, you're looking for the lowest common denominator. Something that's in common to all of them. But in so doing, you're generalizing, and in so generalizing, you eliminate, you can eliminate what's specific to the Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat. And
Indeed.
Govinda Maharaj said for that reason, he wasn't interested in being the chairman or in joining with some universal agglomeration of Vaishnavas, so to speak, many vegetables in the same stew. So Govinda Maharaj wasn't interested in that, and he turned down the invitation to be the chairman of the World Vaishnava Association, because he said, we want to maintain the exclusivity and purity of Srila Guru Maharaj's conception. And then
Yes.
after that person left, who was inviting Govinda Maharaj, then one of the devotees present there made a remark. He said, it is just like Kitri. He said, it is like Kitri. So Kitri meaning you have many things mixed together in the same pot. And no, that I feel that relation of denotation and connotation is related to acceptance. What is it, the topic that Saraswati asked? Acceptance and elimination.
Yeah.
So when we accept something, when we accept something of a higher nature, then we will eliminate what is, so to speak. When we accept something very, how can you say it? A very beautiful and
Refined.
high nature, then we will eliminate what is of less importance or of a lower nature.
Yeah.
Just anyone can understand that. Just like when you're when you're offered, maybe when you're growing up, there are many things that you would eat because that's your diet. You don't know anything better. But then, and it can work, and that I always remember the story of how one can adopt these kind of taste for something which is of a lower nature, just like the story when Indra was cursed to become a pig. Then his pig diet and his pig family and everything was very attractive to him. So he was cursed to become a pig, but after some time the curse ran out. The timeline on the curse ran out. So then the Devas went to get Indra back from went to bring back pig Indra and bring him back to his position as a demigod. But Indra replied, no, I don't want to return. I'm very happy with my pig life. I have my beautiful pig wife and my pig children and family and everything like that, and I'm happy with this. I'm happy with this existence. I don't want to know. I don't want to know Indra, the king of heaven. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested more of being a well-rounded, pig head of the pig family. So what was it then that followed? This part of the story is a little ghastly, but then Indra's pig family was killed. That as part of bringing him back, they killed his pig family, and then Indra pig then saw that as being very disgusting. That he didn't want to know that existence where that kind of death and he gave that up when he saw that his family was mortal, so to speak.
Right.
He was thinking before maybe he hadn't run into the question of mortality. He was just happy wallowing in the mud with a pig diet. So sometimes it may be that before we come in contact with Vaishnavas, we may be, for instance, happy with our former life. But then when we experience something of a superior nature and something that seems to us, more interesting, more wonderful, more, a more beautiful way of living, then we give up all the former bad habits. And this is something that sometimes maybe in my subjectivity I don't understand. So let me before I say this, let me preface this by saying, yesterday I was thinking about the worship of the devotees and everything, and I was considering that I should be very happy accepting what someone offers in terms of devotion. I should not be thinking that, why isn't this person doing this, or why isn't this person doing that? I should rather be happy to see that devotees are engaging themselves as per their capacity, and I'm happy with that. And I think that is a more positive attitude than expecting something from other people and being dissatisfied when they don't offer what you're expecting. So that's the first thing. But in terms of the question of acceptance and elimination, I will say that sometimes devotees have this difficulty because I feel in some ways they are not able to join wholeheartedly into Krishna, or let's just put it this way, that because they haven't actually been in the situation of having to make a decision to accept Krishna consciousness, then they're not able to necessarily eliminate some former, attachments and things like this. But I can also understand that. For instance, if somebody is very young and they're in Krishna consciousness, maybe they've grown up in your own family, and they're at an age when they're at an age when, normally you would think that they want to be able to experience something of this world. Like formerly, when people reached, early adulthood, they would want to make a tour, for instance, of the greater continent. Like, for instance, they would want to go for a European tour and visit all the different countries in Europe. That's common, right?
Sure.
it's part of traveling and wanting to see and experience different things is is part of what we would call coming of age, right? Somebody comes of age, they want to leave home, they want to they want to leave their father and mother, and they want to go off and see something of the world. That's natural, and I believe it's not unusual for people to go through that. So many of us went through that. I remember with one devotee here, Bimala. She is from Brazil. She went to India. She was very happy that she went to India and everything. She met Govinda Maharaj and Guru Maharaj and everything. And then later also, she wanted to return to India, but that was not something that was understandable by her father. For instance, her father was thinking, well, you just went to India. Why do you have to go back there? You've seen India, you've seen the world. Why is it necessary to go back there? So, I mean, then he told her, if you go back and you leave your responsibilities here, then you're no longer part of our household. I mean, he was thinking in terms of, later his mentality changed completely, but I mean, he's a very wonderful, nice man. And so then she went back to India, and then Govinda Maharaj told me, well, Bimala can't return home because her father told her, if you go to India, you don't come back. And then Govinda Maharaj said, so will you accept her? And we were in San Jose at the time. Will you accept her in San Jose? Yes, send her to San Jose. But, sometimes there's this situation that exists that we want people to accept more responsibility, and at the same time they have this feeling that, well, I'm not so old or experienced as you are, and I still have some desire to know something of the world and know something of life and to be able. I remember when India wanted their independence, then the UK, or I guess it was Great Britain, told them, well, if you have your independence, you'll make many mistakes, and that's true. And then the reply was, we want the right to be able to make our own mistakes. We want the right to make mistakes. So people feel that as of coming to the level of maturity. They also want the right to be able to do things wrong. I mean, they don't want to have to be, I mean, you might say that's part of individuality. That's part of freedom of expression. That's part of independence. That you have the right to make some mistakes. And many times we'll see that with our devotees. It's hard for them to think in terms of their responsibilities, and at the same time that what we expect of them, and what they want to experience themselves. But we also have the expression from Srila Guru Maharaj, where Srila Guru Maharaj said, "Bhakti by force is no bhakti at all." So things don't work out very well if things are just done on the basis of obligation. This is you have to do this. This is your responsibility. I mean, not too long ago, I went to see my brother, and I remember my brother, his son now is very responsible, has a family, and now his son is 50 years old or near that. So things are much different. But when his son was young, my brother complained so much about his activities of his son. He was young and he was a little wild at the time. So I told my brother, You're very upset with him, but you don't remember how you were when you were his age. I remember how you were and how I was. And your son is very well behaved in comparison to how we were. And it's true. So, you have, on the one hand, as Saraswati is asking, we want to speak about acceptance and elimination. That when you accept something, you have to, then comes elimination of what is of a lesser nature. But in order to eliminate what is of a lesser nature, then it would also follow that you have to have come in contact with true acceptance. I mean, it can't just be a matter of formality, And there are so many things that are related, and it's actually, these are very natural developments which will happen in devotion. We don't want to make things mechanical. We don't want to expect things to happen just as a matter of duty or responsibility. I mean, in some ways you could say, Krishna is saying, Sarvadharmam parityajam mamekam sharanam vraja, ham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshayashyami mashucha. That he says in one sense, you can say in one sense, he says you can discard what is your formalistic conception of what is responsibility, your dharma, what you formalize to be. You must do this, and you must do that, and you must do this, and you must do that. I mean, people get tired of hearing that. Of course, nobody who's had a son or daughter has ever experienced that, of course, right? No son or daughter gets tired of hearing, you must do this, you must do that, you must do that, you must do this. When people hear that, then their reaction is, especially if they're young, they're thinking, my parents, they just don't understand. They don't understand. They don't remember what it was like to be young. And they're expecting something of me which I'm unwilling to deliver. I'm not willing to deliver what they expect of me. It seems unreasonable. It seems unnatural. It seems against the idea of having some individual selection, the right to decide as an individual. And maybe that's what had broke down in India, their so-called caste system. People would be born into a particular so-called caste, but it may have interfered even with their individual sense and taste. If suppose somebody is born in a Kshatriya family and he's expecting to be a valiant warrior, but he's of a nature of being, for instance, a musician, or interested in being among the working class, or interested in being of a Brahmin nature, then what are you going to do? You're going to say, oh, you were born into a Kshatriya family, so you must fight with it. You must join us in fighting against the enemy. Well, I guess then you have these preconceived ideas. And remember, Prahlad Maharaj, he was told by his father, these are the principles of politics. Offer somebody a lucrative position so that they'll take up, they'll work with you, they'll be in line with you. Offer them some position. Give them some, you can now become the ambassador from the UK for let's say, what's the place, Monte Carlo or something like that. you can become the ambassador for this, very nice position that you're there. So offer them some kind of a lucrative post. Or first you offer them flattery. Oh, you're so wonderful. Govinda Maharaj once told me, you tell the devotees, like you, I have never seen someone so effulgent with Krishna consciousness. Govinda Maharaj told, you tell like he said, you become like me. And then he said, complete liar. That's what Govinda Maharaj told me. You tell, like I am saying, like you, I have not seen anyone so effulgent with Krishna consciousness. And then Govinda Maharaj says, so you become like me, complete liar. That's what he told me. So that's first, flattery. Offer them some position. In other words, bribe, some position. Then that doesn't work. What is it? Threats? And if that doesn't work, argumentum ad baculum, right? How would you translate argumentum ad baculum? The stick, exactly. Who said that? Who said the stick? That was the right answer. The stick. Was that Gaurachandra?
I don't know.
He didn't hear. He was jealous that I have a blanket with me, so he went to look for one. What was the question, Maharaj?
Yeah. What was the question?
Yes, what was the question for him?
I thought maybe it was him who said stick. No, I said, what is argumentum ad baculum? And somebody said stick. And I said, yes, that's correct. Argumentum ad baculum. First, you offer someone flattery, then you offer them some bribery or some reward, and then if that doesn't work, you maybe threaten them, and if that doesn't work, argumentum ad baculum, the stick. The stick. Then there, wait a minute. There's Gaurachandra come.
Yes, Maharaj, I'm here.
So it wasn't you who said stick, right?
What?
Aha. No, it wasn't. We see it wasn't you at all. So anyway, these are the things, but Prahlad Maharaj didn't take very well to his father's Gurukul. Hiranyakashipu had hired some of the best teachers around. Shanda and Amarka, they were the sons of Shukracharya. And they were very good at trying to teach Prahlad Maharaj. But Prahlad Maharaj had no interest in learning politics and ruling by, to become a successful ruler. He was not inclined to that. He said, this goes against my feeling that I don't accept friends and enemies because it is all based on some foreign imposition on the mind when everyone is Jivar Swarupoy Krishna Nityadas. Everyone's Jivatma, everyone's eternal servant of the Lord. So why should I accept some artificial designations made in terms of politics? Now, how would you explain that to modern political leaders, would you say? We're not worried about, the threat of the Chinese or the threat of the Russians, because we see that everyone is spirit soul. And why should we artificially, make barriers between people based on some this kind of imposition. Oh. Now the person when obviously would not become a prime minister, right? With that kind of thinking, they wouldn't want to
Unlikely.
make they wouldn't want to make somebody like Prahlad Maharaj the prime minister. Is that correct?
Probably not.
No. So, but anyway, returning to our question of acceptance and elimination, it is natural that when we experience Krishna consciousness, that we will want to eliminate those things that are not conducive to Krishna consciousness, just like in Sharanagati he explains acceptance of everything favorable for Krishna consciousness and rejection of that which is unfavorable. So again, it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning, connotation and denotation. We want to accept those things which are very much in line with our very much following our particular line given by Guru Maharaj. We want to accept and worship those things which are very beneficial for us to develop as for us to develop along the lines which Srila Maharaj has explained. We're interested, very much interested in Guru Maharaj's conception. And I don't know, and I remember one time, maybe I shouldn't be speaking about these things because we're dealing with specifics here, but one time I remember someone visited a particular temple, and they saw in that temple everybody was nicely dressed. Everybody was very nicely dressed. They all had their tilak on very nicely, and everything seemed to be very precise and orderly. Incidentally, that was not something that Guru Maharaj was known for being a good dresser. But anyway, everything seemed very nice in that particular place, in that particular conception. But on another level, you find a temple where not everybody is nicely dressed, not everything is going along in the best organized way, but that particular place gives an emphasis upon Siddhanta, gives an emphasis upon, a proper understanding. But in terms of a nice presentation, maybe they don't have that nice presentation. In terms of, if somebody walks into that temple, they may see that things are rather sometimes a little haphazard, that things are not going along according to agenda, according to the way they're supposed to be. No, in other words, the railway is not always on schedule, or as you would say, not always on schedule. A rather strange way of saying schedule. Okay. So, what would you make of that, Saraswati? What would you make of that? Is that good?
Very beautiful explanation, Maharaj. Wonderful.
I don't know that it is, but anyway. So that's your question is about acceptance and rejection. But one point, as I said along, I wouldn't necessarily expect rejection when persons haven't yet agreed on what it means to accept. So, as anybody who has, as Govinda Maharaj said, their sons or daughter are teenagers. What did Govinda Maharaj say about teenagers? You remember? He said, teenager can do anything. Teenager can do anything, and they will too. So in other words, don't be surprised. Teenager can do anything. You have a teenage son or daughter. Now, many of you are not. Some of you are in that situation. Maybe you have a son or daughter who's a teenager, or maybe your son or daughter's a little older than a teenager. Maybe they're 50 or something older than a teenager. Anyway, teenager can do anything. And then I think we want to be able to operate, as I said, when Guru Maharaj said, bhakti by force is no bhakti at all. So we don't want to be forcing people, but it is very nice when individuals of their own accord want to accept more responsibility within a. We're happy when that happens. If somebody comes forward and says, I want to accept more responsibility. Oh, look, Suvasini, she's just joined us. Suvasini, how are you?
Dandavats Maharaj, I'm fine. Yeah, thank you. Dandavats Maharaj. Yeah. How are you, Maharaj?
I'm good. Everything's going on.
Yeah.
We're still in lockdown, but I'm thinking on our deity anniversary, which is the 12th of June. That's when I think we want to open up the whole temple again.
Okay.
Now, I'm hoping that devotees will get vaccinated. But some of them have given me very concrete reasons why they refuse to get vaccinated. That is, that you and we cannot understand that this whole thing is a conspiracy. And we don't necessarily see who's funding the Wuhan biological weapons laboratory. We can't see that, and therefore we are like sheep, following the line of vaccination. Well, yes, I am. What do you think? What do I think of that? Bah. I'm like a sheep. I'm accepting. My theory is, I don't care who has done what. If vaccination will help, fine. Then put the needle in my arm. And if you say vaccination will not help, but vaccination really won't help at all, what do I say? Put the needle in my arm and just shut up. I don't care. Bah. So, but anyway, we hope on June 12th, regardless of whether this is all a conspiracy or not, we want to open up our temple. So those who are happy with vaccination, fine. And those who are not happy with vaccination, they can still come, but we hope that they won't infect each other. That's our thinking. I mean, anyway, a little facetious there, but still some idea that. So I'm hoping to open up our temple on the 12th. Ireland, are they open?
Maharaj, just they relaxed a little bit now. We can travel within the county now. And shops are opening this week, and so yeah, just a little relaxed now.
And are people, well, I'm not even going to ask about vaccination. It seems to be, for some reason, for some people, it seems to be a sensitive topic. They don't want to be. And even persons have told me, some persons have told me, I've never been vaccinated against anything in my whole life. So, and I guess in Ayurvedic medicine, demoniac medicine is accepted as that which pierces the skin, I once read. But I grew up in a good working class demon family, so I don't care. I'm not bothered by those considerations. I mean,
Maharaj, Rasamai Pandita has a question for you.
really? She didn't say anything.
She sent me a little message saying she has a question for you.
Okay, will I see it in my messages?
No, she wants to ask you something.
And then if we are on the waiting list, there is 2 devotees here with questions too.
Oh, please let them go ahead, Didi.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, we can deal with questions one at a time.
Okay.
All right, Pandita, your question.
Well, so I was just thinking about the Trinada Pisunichana verse again, and I just feel that there's so much to that verse that is so deep, and I was thinking about
which verse is this?
Trinada Pisunichana.
Okay.
And I was, one thing that I thought about, which is not always such a straightforward thing to thing, is that, like, you know, to be humble and then to tolerate and accept versus to tolerate and to act is something I think about a lot, and sort of like, you know, there are 2 different approaches to tolerance. And when like taking the Gita, for instance, you know, sometimes we're required to act, but when to act and when not to act, when to tolerate in a form of acceptance versus tolerance with action and initiative, is something that I'm not always very clear on. And it's a bit difficult for me to know when to do what.
Well, one can be tolerant by nature, but that doesn't mean that one is forbidden to act. I mean, we want to be able to act in terms of what we consider to be, you know, devotional values of life. But under the line of Trinada Pisunichena, I mean, Srila Guru Maharaj gives the example, is humility, offering respect to others, and tolerance. But he says, does that mean that we should allow that a dog will come into the temple? We see a dog come into the temple, he may cause some disturbance, and we're thinking, oh, I must be humble, I must be tolerant, and therefore, you know, one will not act. And one will think, oh, here, dog, please sit down. Can I offer you a plate of prasadam? I mean, obviously, we're to be tolerant, but we should understand when we're to be tolerant. And we should, it's not that we accept anything wholesale. Obviously, if I may try to be humble and tolerant and offer respect to others, but does that mean that I'm going to watch and see that a devotee is harmed? I'm not going to watch and I had this conversation once with one particular devotee, and he told me, well, I can't get into the specific. It's too, actually, it's too political. But you know, what was involved is, you know, if I'm not going to be tolerant if I see that somebody is threatening to my guru, for instance. If somebody has a knife and is threatening to my guru, am I going to tolerate that situation? No. No. What are you going to do? What should I do? Well, I mean, individuals with different natures will act differently. You know, if I see somebody threatening my guru, maybe somebody with a different nature would act differently. Me, I would just grab a gun and shoot him through the head. That's how I would react. But I mean, I don't consider that that's the most admirable way of reacting. We see, like, sometimes, you know, there's better ways of doing things, just like you have to understand the situation. Somebody came into the temple in East London with a knife, a kitchen knife. But Lavanya Sundari, she was able to talk in such a way that she disarmed the person. So that wasn't okay. Very good.
Yeah.
This is the London. So she was able to talk that person out of using their knife. In that situation, that was the best approach. There's nobody threatening one's guru. It's just a threatening situation. One wants to disarm that situation. That's not a situation where I would want to use, you know, force against that person. Just figure that person may be crazy or something, and let's see how if we can disarm the situation in another way, not to harm that person. But if someone's actually come to the temple, just as, you know, I remember when I was young, it was very strange. I was some members of, at least this wasn't the reason that they gave me, some members of the what was it, FBI or something. They came and they wanted to interview me about somebody who had submitted a form for a conscientious objector. The war was going on, and this person listed me as a reference, which was a big mistake as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't have the least idea what to say in support of somebody's conscientious objector form. But they listed me as a witness. I told the people, well, I don't feel I'm really prepared or properly representative to give a witness as a conscientious objector witness. And but the person proceeded a little bit, the representative, and he said, well, what would you do if somebody attacked your family, your house, your family with weapons? And I said, oh, I'd kill them. You know, what am I supposed to say? You know, what would you do? What would you do? You know, obviously you'd try to take away the threat. So I told him, I don't think I'm the proper person to be given to ask this question. I could say in support of this person, yes, according to their nature, they're a good candidate for conscientious objector. According to my nature, I'm not a good candidate for a conscientious objector. You know, based on this artificial criteria that I can't react against something that, you know, so you can, but then again, one time, let's see, somebody, who is this? Somebody's calling me and left a voicemail. Let me just, I don't know what this voicemail means. Here, let's see. Huh. Somebody telling me they have really good news about my student loan balance. Huh. It sounds a little bit like a scam.
Never know.
You never know. I don't know. Maybe your student loan balance is now $1,300,000. Was originally 50, but you didn't pay it back. So anyway, so where was I? I was talking about this in answer to Pandita's question about about tolerance. So I came to Calcutta, and Govinda Maharaj was there, and he offered me he told me that I could move into this room near him, and when I opened up the door, I found there was a mother cat with about 4 kittens in the room. So I, at the time, thought, well, I don't want to kick this mother cat out of her home by taking the room. So I told Govinda Maharaj, well, maybe I'll take a different room. And then Govinda Maharaj told me, he told me, well, where is your tolerance? He said, it's not very difficult for us. There's a cat in there with kittens, so then we just take the cat and the kittens out of the room. That's no problem. And then just clean up the room, and then the room's okay. But he said, but where is your tolerance? So I didn't think of it in those terms. I was thinking like, well, if I take this room and I'll be taking away this cat's home. But Govinda Maharaj put it more, I guess, more correctly in terms of my lack of tolerance for not just saying, hey, there's a cat in there, and then they'd say, oh, excuse me, Maharaj, we'll take the cat out and everything like that. So, I don't know. I didn't know how to think about the situation. I didn't feel I was necessarily intolerant, but I'll say that Govinda Maharaj pegged it that way, so he must be right. That I should have just said, hey, there's a cat in there. No, okay, we'll get the cat out instead. Anyway. And then another time, I don't remember where it was, 2 wasps flew up in front of my face, and then I reacted, and then Govinda Maharaj said, where's your tolerance? Well, I don't know. I wasn't so tolerant. In terms of 2 wasps in my face, but anyway. But maybe the common thread is I'm not tolerant, but I don't know. Anyway, in reference to Pandita's question, I don't really feel that Trinada Pisuni Chena precludes activity, to be tolerant and act. Why is it? It says, offer, what is it? Humility, offering respect to others, and tolerance. But tolerance doesn't preclude action, I don't believe. It does, tolerance, just in the name of tolerance, it doesn't mean that we abdicate any responsibility or any need for taking action, is it? Or, Pandita, what do you think? Am I oversimplifying the situation or what?
No, Maharaj, I'm happy to hear your thoughts, but the reason why it came to mind was that once, sort of like with tolerance, also there is that choice of acceptance. And sometimes it seems to me that sometimes in order to, I don't know, do the right thing sometimes requires action and that could potentially be categorized in under tolerance, or under the process of you being humble, tolerant, and giving honor to others.
Well, I think it depends on the individual nature. I once heard that Srila Sridhar Maharaj said that after Arjuna heard the Bhagavad Gita, then he fought. But then he said, if Uddhava had heard the Bhagavad Gita, maybe he would have left the battlefield. Did you ever hear that remark, Devashis?
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah.
So,
that makes a lot of sense to me, in the sense that everyone has so many different natures and different characters that respond differently to situations. And apparently someone may be tolerating in different ways, or have different expressions of humility.
yeah. So, repeat that. I just was looking at a message that came into me.
No worries, Maharaj. Like that appeals a lot to me, in the sense that everyone has different characters and responds differently to situations, where someone may be like responding with humility to a certain situation that can be expressed in various different ways depending on the character of the person, the devotee.
Yes, I guess. Yeah, I mean, how people react to Trinadapi Suni Chena Tarori Vasahishnuna Manena Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. I mean, this is Mahaprabhu's guidelines. This is very wonderful, and we are to follow that guideline. But everyone will have a different way of acting. I mean, some actions just may be, I don't know, for want of a better word, they may be precluded just based on one's relationship with one's spiritual master. I don't know. I want to be humble. I want to be tolerant. I want to give respect to others. But at the same time, I want to be able to, spread Krishna consciousness to others. And that may involve some, as you say, some activity. I want to be active in that respect. And I remember when, for many years, we used to go out collecting. We'd collect, much of my time I was collecting in India. And in the very beginning, I remember that people would give me some excuse, and then I wouldn't know how to react to that excuse. But actually, as anyone who has done, collecting, they may know this. Is Lavanya Mai, is she present? No. See, she's a good person to mention because she collects a lot. And, as it so happens, when you're approaching other persons, very often, because the conditioned soul is running away from any kind of devotional service for many, many millions of births. So they're not necessarily inclined to say yes. Rather, they will look for a reason to many of them, some devotees naturally, from the very moment they hear about Krishna consciousness, they say, yes, how do I sign up? How do I engage myself? But when we're approaching people, especially we're approaching people in the street, things like that, or in the case of where I was working, approaching people in their offices or where they worked, trying to engage them, it's very often that people would say no, or they would give you some excuse. And really, in order to do something successfully, you have to be able to expect people to say no, and then you have to be able to. Somebody turned a donkey loose. I don't know what happened. But it's very often that people will say no, and then actually that's just the beginning. And then I remember I was in Hong Kong, and I went with one other sannyasi to we were going out collecting, and I thought that other sannyasi was rather forceful, but he thought I was more forceful, and so I was surprised. And he said, he said, criticized me for being too persistent or forceful. So we went to this one man's office, and the man said, let me think about this. I explained everything to him, and he said, let me think about this. And then this sannyasi started to say, yes, sir, we'll come back. And then as he started to speak, I put my hand on his shoulder and forced him not to get up from the seat. He was sitting in a seat, and he was about to rise, and I put my hand on his shoulder and pushed down, saying, he was starting to say, yes, sir, we'll come back, or something like that. And I said to that man, I said, well, it's actually, I think it's Ravana. What is it? Ravana gave advice, was it to Lakshman?
Yes.
Okay. He gave advice to Lakshman, and Ramachandra said to Lakshman, go hear from him. He's dying, but he's a successful statesman. So the advice was, if something's auspicious, do it today. And if it's inauspicious, you can leave it for tomorrow. So we were with this man, he said, let me think about it. And I said to that man, I said, what is there to think about? This is Krishna Seva. It's auspicious. And the saying is, if something's auspicious, do it today. And if it's inauspicious, leave it for tomorrow. But this is auspicious. Why should it be left for tomorrow? I said, now call in your secretary and tell her to write me a check for this amount. That's what I said. And the man smiled, and he called his secretary in, and he told her to write me out a check for that amount. Yeah. He was happy that he saw I had some belief in what I was saying, and he reacted. He at first gives me a lame excuse, like come back in a week, and who I was with was ready to accept that. And I held him down, and I told him, the man, like this. And then when we were leaving, that sannyasi who told me before I was too forceful, although I thought of him as more forceful than me in many other instances, who said I was too forceful. And then afterwards, that sannyasi said to me, you were right and I was wrong. That's what he said. So sometimes in terms of acting, we may be Trinata P. Sunicheta, we may be little wilting wallflowers and not want to be very much in terms of acting. But sometimes it's necessary to have conviction in what you're saying. You're saying this. Do you really believe it? Do you have some conviction in what you're saying? You're telling people to surrender. But, do you have enough conviction in it that you'll deal with what you're saying to be able back that up. Now, I'm not saying I'm always right. Many times I'm just totally too unreasonably insistent, and that, unfairly so. It's not like I'm always right. I'm always doing things right. Sometimes I may be unfairly pushing people. And I said at the very beginning, I want to be able to accept the devotion which devotees are offering voluntarily and not impose upon them something unfair or in terms of my own expectations. And that bhakti by force is no bhakti at all. So I do want to be fair to everyone, and I want to be happy to accept whatever devotion someone is offering and not asked unfairly that they do something that they don't intend or don't want to do. I should be able to embrace what devotees are willing to give. But I'm just saying that's one thing. But when you go out and, for instance, you're going out collecting, or you're going out, in terms of preaching or something. Well, maybe in certain situations the criteria will be different. I mean, I'm sure anybody who has done distribution will tell you that. Yes, sometimes when people say no, you have to be able to expect them to say no, and then to be able to deal with that situation. You can't just always let conditioned souls run away from Krishna consciousness. I said in the beginning, I want to be able to accept what the devotees are offering. So I won't necessarily put devotees in the category of conditioned souls. They're not trying to avoid Krishna consciousness. They're trying to engage themselves according to their own capacity. But there may be, when we go out and meet with other people, there may be at times when a little bit of conviction is necessary. So acting is not against Trinadapi Sunichena. It's just a question of we can act and at the same time be tolerant. I don't feel being, by asking people to engage themselves, especially someone who's new, etc., or if I'm collecting, I don't feel that's being intolerant. Rather, I will think that I'm trying to act in terms of what is their best interest. Anyway, my answer.
Maharaj, Krishna Kishore here, Dhanavad.
Dhanyavad.
I was thinking recently about this same sort of question, but my response to someone who was talking about this was, I was thinking actually Trinadapi Sunichana means that we act in this way, but in service, that we will be tolerant in service, we will be humble in service. So it's all an act, it's all about actually acting in that nature, but in service. That is where Trinadapi Sunichana really fits in.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, but I can also add to the point to that different people will have different natures, so they may see Trinadapi Sunichena, they may see acting in that way in terms of different ways according to their own nature. Not everyone's nature is the same. Somebody's nature may be that they're by nature very sensitive, and they don't want to impose themselves upon other people. So they may see this in one way, whereas somebody who's of a different nature may see acting in terms of Trinadapi Sunichena. Somebody else may see it entirely different according to their nature. Just as I said, Guru Maharaj said that Arjuna reacted differently to hearing Bhagavad Gita than, say, Uddhava would have reacted had he heard the Bhagavad Gita. Not everyone's going to respond to this. not everyone is going to act in the same way, but they all may be, as you're saying, acting within the parameters of humility, offering respect to others, and tolerance. But it's just they see that in different. Two individuals may see that in entirely different ways.
Sure, that makes sense.
But somehow or other, the final line is Trinada Pisuni Chena Taroriva Sahisnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Supposedly, whatever way you're acting, you will come to the conclusion of Kirtaniya Sada Hari. That with that kind of mindset, you can always engage in chanting the holy names. So somehow or other, these principles are enabling you to always maintain your sense of, what is it? A sense of Sankirtan, the sense of participation, the sense of chanting. In other words, that, so to speak, you're part of the congregation. You know, Kirtaniya Sada Hari. I mean, if there's a kirtan, I'm not going to be necessarily of a mentality that I'm just going to be in the corner chanting japa. If there's a kirtan, I want to be singing and dancing with the devotees. I want to be joining with others. I may have my own nature, but I don't want to be reclusive to the point that I can associate with devotees, chant with devotees, and join in festivities with the devotees. So whatever we're following in terms of Trinada Pisunichena, if it is not resulting with us having any enthusiasm for Krishna consciousness, then maybe there's something wrong with our application of those principles, right? Would that seem so?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, those principles in of themselves are wonderful, but Mahaprabhu is saying, Kirtaniya Sada Hari, and this way you'll always be able to chant the holy name, you know. But if I'm following this and I never chant the holy name, that my japa has cobwebs all over it, and I go to chant, I put my hand inside my japa bag and I find all my beads have been eaten by termites. Well,
yeah,
I don't know if do termites. I don't know if termites eat tulsi. Well,
I'm not familiar with the termites enough to comment.
Well, I have bought so-called tulsi japa beads where some of the strings, the beads were eaten away by some kind of bug that was in the bag or something. So maybe those beads were not genuine tulsi beads. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There was some sawdust in the bag, and just some of the beads were just there was just string remaining there.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever had that happen?
No, I've not had that happen. I have had one bead that just sort of, I think it was cut in a very strange way and it kind of came off over time, but because it wasn't very thick in one place. But no, I've never had termites in my japa bag.
No, not my bag, but when I was buying these beads from.
Okay.
I think real tulsi, termites don't eat them. But if somebody says they're genuine tulsi, but some of the beads have been are now just some sawdust in the bottom of the container, maybe those aren't real.
Okay.
Not that anybody would ever misrepresent what is genuine tulsi. That would never happen. I don't think so. All right. So now, do we have? Now let's see. It's 8 o'clock for all of you. Do we have any more questions?
Dilo ahora.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Oh, there's a
Did that
question.
work better? Okay. So yes, the question is regarding how to control the mind, which is already explained in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, which is basically impossible to do that. But are there any tools or guidance that you could give to make our thoughts
Yeah.
more toward devotion? Because at the end of the day, we have.
No, there are some tools that I can think of. One of them is a shoe, the other is a broom. According to, from what I understand, what is it? Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said one should beat the mind with a shoe. What is it, 100 times in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay. So one tool is a shoe. Then in the evening, one is to beat the mind, what is it, 100 times with a broom?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two tools, shoe and broom. For dealing with the mind. Now, I don't know how to deal with the mind. Well, Srila Govindamar said when he came to Guru Maharaj said, "Can you follow what I say and not what your mind says?" So I would assume that one way of controlling the mind is to be able to consider which is of more importance to be the instructions of the spiritual master than what are the instructions of my own mind. But I'm very good at giving this advice because I think I'm not so good at following that because I know my mind is really annoying. If I could banish my mind, maybe I would do that. Buy my mind a one-way ticket to where? Where could I buy my mind a one-way ticket to? I don't know, but I mean, I recently, in fact, I went through this and I came to a consideration of after some time and a little bit of inaction, how I wanted to deal with my mind. I mean, I actually recently came to that. And I decided that what I was going to do is I was going to force my mind to follow a schedule that I would impose upon my mind. In other words, I would wake up by this particular time. I would go to the temple and I would do this from this and this time to this time. Then I would sing from this time to this time. And then I would give class from this time to this time. And I started to do that. And then I also established that after that's done, I will go for a walk for this amount of time and I will do this. So that was very good at establishing a morning agenda and forcing my mind not to rebel against that agenda. And that seemed to work pretty well. But then I began to realize that that was good for the morning, but I needed some kind of regimen for my mind in the evening also. Because then the mind, rebels towards the evening and say, "Oh, get away from me, I'm tired." I don't want to follow your regimen. I followed your regimen in the morning. Now I'm tired. So I feel that I successfully was beating my mind with a shoe in the morning, but now I have to go to the second part of beating my mind with a broom in the evening. I've only successfully beaten my mind with a shoe. Now I have to establish a more discipline for my mind in the evening, but that's more difficult because I tend to be more, "Oh man, lay off, I'm tired, come on. followed this whole thing in the morning, and now let's not get fanatical, you know. So now I have to find myself a really good broomstick to deal with the mind in the evening. But you're asking me, Falguni, and I'm trying to answer as according to how I see the situation. So how to deal with the mind? I mean, the mind cannot be given, as far as I'm concerned, the mind cannot be given too much slack. The mind will take advantage. Is that true? Does anyone find their mind to be disturbing?
What do you mean by slack?
Huh?
What do you mean by slack?
That if I'm not on guard, my mind will take advantage of me. That's what I mean by slack. If I'm not vigilant, my mind will start, you know, conning me. You know what conning means? To con somebody. You know that? The word con?
Yeah, Gaura Chandra is giving me synonyms in Spanish, so
Okay.
engatusar.
Yeah, my mind will con me. If I'm not very vigilant, my mind will con me. I'm sure of that. I'm 100% sure of that. Because what does the word godas mean? Go means a servant of one's senses. Godas, a servant of one's senses. But I feel that that word godas also means, along with the senses have a union representative. The union representative is the mind. Because so you're trying to control your senses, and your mind, as a union representative, will say, well, wait a minute, you can't do that to these senses. They have seniority. They've been with you for, you know, they've been with you for over 50 years or over 60 years. They have seniority. You can't just impose things arbitrarily. We have our right. We have our right to seniority. We have the right to strike. We have the right to, you know, rebel against unfair, what would the word be? Unfair corporate, what's a union terminology, syndicate terminology? Unfair,
Practices.
Regulation.
Practices. Unfair practices.
well, but whose unfair practices? Come on, put it in terms of syndicates terminology.
That's how they will say that it.
Prohibitions.
Well, no, but it has to be unfair. We're against unfair capitalistic, you know, capitalist impositions of abuse of power. Done by who? Who are the capitalists that are imposing abuse of power against the workers? Who are they? What position are they?
That would be the intelligence, no?
Management. We're not going to allow management. These
employers.
Huh? Employers, management, but we could say they are the, what's the term we could use? They are the, some kind of connotative word. I'm looking for that. Who is unfairly dominating the workers? Can you say? I mean, this terminology may be a little antiquated because we're not thinking about it in terms anymore of, we're not thinking about it in terms of unions and employers anymore. Now we have different terminology like.
The word that you're looking, Maharaj, is Jeff Bezos. That's it. We can.
What is it?
Jeff Bezos. That's the end of it.
Devashis, what was that word?
Jeff Bezos.
Amazon chief, Amazon CEO.
Well, I don't know about him, but what about now now Bill and Melinda Gates are divorcing. Can you believe that?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
good for her, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she didn't she didn't want to voluntarily accept coronavirus.
Yeah. I read today something funny. It says that she's the ultimate buying low, selling high.
Well,
Anyways, Maharaj, I think that your
no,
idea.
they had they had a joke, and I won't say about who it was, about a particular nationality, and they said, what was the best business in the world? And it was to buy one of this particular nationality, buy them for what they are worth and sell them for what they think they're worth. That was the best business in the world.
Yeah, don't say that, Maharaj, because the pibes might get very upset.
I'm not saying it for that very reason.
Oye, che.
All right, stop with your hints. Okay. So, any other questions? What's the question of Gordon Orion?
He says he remembers that Tyagi Maharaj once explained why we sing the Maha Mantra in two parts, the Hare Krishna part, and after the assembled devotees repeat, then the Hare Krishna part. As in other lines, they sing the full Maha Mantra, then they repeat all of it. That's his question.
Wait,
Simple.
okay. Uh, Again, this connection is not good. Devashis, did you understand that question?
Yes, Raj.
What is it?
Is that in other lines, when the in other, you can say, like sister organizations or so on, when they chant the Maha Mantra, they in the kirtan they chant the whole mantra and then repeat the whole mantra, whereas we chant half of the mantra and then repeat half the mantra, then the second half, and then repeat the second half. Why do we do that differently?
Because we can't remember the whole mantra. Many of us are very old and approaching senility. No, actually, I, in order to answer, by the way, have our way of chanting half of the mantra and then the other half, is that approach followed in many temples of the Gaudiya Math?
All, yeah, pretty much
What?
all. Pretty much all.
Okay. So, I would just say, let's put this more specifically, and you can't answer this to people that way because they won't accept it. But I'll just say that not everything ISKCON does has been done by the other chapters of the Gaudiya, has been done by the Gaudiya Math. And for instance, Srila Saraswati Thakur, he established, what is it, 108 names of sannyas. And he established that, and he listed these names of sannyas, for instance, are in Gaudiya Kantahar. And before that, there would be Bhakti, and then a name which would go along with Bhakti and the chosen sannyas name, which would be of 3 syllables. And that was this formula for establishing sannyas. But in ISKCON, they didn't do that. They would establish that if somebody's name was Adhoksaja, for instance, they would become Adhoksaja Swami. Or they would, if their name was Mahamantra, they'd become Mahamantra Swami. They just add a Swami on the end, or sometimes a Goswami. and there was no bhakti first. But that was not the way that was established by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He established a system of sannyas. So why didn't they follow that system of sannyas? I would say they didn't follow that system of sannyas because it was not known to them that that system existed. They didn't know what the criteria was established by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So they didn't exactly follow that because it wasn't known, when they in terms of their giving of sannyas, and it wasn't established that way. And I would say, that within the Gaudiya Mat, the chanting of Hare Krishna as we sing it, dividing it in two parts, that has been established in the temples of the Gaudiya Mat, and I would assume it was established also during the time of Srila Saraswati Thakur that way. But not everything that's been known or followed by the Gaudiya Mat or which was established by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was actually incorporated into ISKCON because they weren't aware of that. So then over time it became established that way, and many things were established according to Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's own volition, how he wanted to establish things. And he is, just like it says, the Acharya may adjust things according to time and circumstance. So maybe these points were, as far as how Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada wanted to do things, that's what he established. So why is it different than what we do? Because what we do was established by Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and he was more involved in the internal organization and the running of the temples of the Gaudiya Mat. He was a long-time preacher within the Gaudiya Mat. He knew what the teachings of Srila Saraswati Thakur were, and he established things according to Srila Saraswati Thakur's instructions. And maybe, in maybe in ISKCON or other places, they didn't establish those things because either they weren't aware of those things, or once they were aware, they didn't consider it was so much necessary to, so to speak, dot every I and cross every T. But so many things are a little different. For instance, one time I was coming back from Navadip, and I was going to Guadalajara, and I met some ISKCON devotees, and I'm carrying a deity with me, and the deity is of Gauranga Sundar. I have a deity, he's all wrapped the deity's all wrapped, so he's not visible. And I meet some devotees in ISKCON, and then they say, "Oh, what do you have there? What are you carrying?" And I said, "Oh, this is Gauranga Sundar. This is Mahaprabhu." And then they said, "Well, where's Nityananda?" And because they're accustomed to think that you establish or you install Gaur-Nitai. They're not used to the idea that you establish Mahaprabhu by himself. They're thinking when you establish deities, you establish Gaur-Nitai, not that you just establish Gauranga Sundar. But that was what Srila Saraswati Thakur established, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nayanya. He established Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna, or Radha Govinda, together. But there may be some persons like Bhakti Sharanga Goswami Maharaj. He was inclined also, I'm told, to the worship of Gaur-Nitai. So, you can't say that because someone worships Nityananda Prabhu and Mahaprabhu like him. I just was informed, and I want to listen to it, of Vishaka's latest description of Nitai Charan, who's somebody dear to, he was disciple, and he's from Guadalajara temple, and he was very, very true to his name, Nitai Charan. He left this world in the Ekachakra temples, where they have these big 7-foot tall deities, more or less, of Gaur Nityananda. So, we do have temples like Ekachakra, where we do have Mahaprabhu and Nityananda. Also, I'm told in Puri. So you can't just say that we always have Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna. Or in our temple here, we have Sri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari. In the Temple of London, you have Sri Guru Gauranga Radhasham Sundar, right? So
Yeah.
there you have Mahaprabhu with you have Mahaprabhu with Gandharva Govinda Sundar, Gandharvika Giridhari, Radhasham Sundar. So, and in London you have Mahaprabhu, and maybe sometime in the future, I don't know, you may have Radha Govinda or whichever name the deities. Maybe in the future, if the temple became, you might have that. But I'm saying in ISKCON, these devotees, they saw me carrying the deity of Mahaprabhu, and they said, well, where's Nityananda? And I said, no, it's just Mahaprabhu. And they looked at me like, oh, this guy's really off. This guy's off. Something's wrong with him. He just has Mahaprabhu, but he hasn't brought Nityananda Prabhu. What's the matter with him? I mean, they reacted like that, They reacted like I was wrong, just like some people may react, well, why do you split the Maha Mantra into two parts? You're chanting one half and then the other half. Why don't you chant to get them together? And maybe they can even quote something that maybe something Prabhupada said about the Maha Mantra should be chanted all together. I don't know. But, I mean, and I lived in ISKCON for many years, and that's the way I chanted the Maha Mantra, but that's not the way I chant the Maha Mantra now. Except when sometimes I'm in the temple chanting the different kirtans, and there's no one to answer, then I'll just say things one line, and I won't repeat them. And then by circumstance, I may say the whole Maha Mantra together. Or when I'm chanting on japa, on my japa beads, then I do chant the whole Maha Mantra together on each bead. I don't split it in half. So anyway, that's how I'm answering that question. The question is not why do we do we do this way and someone else does it this other way. I think the question more appropriately is why do we do this way and the ISKCON does it a different way. That's really what the question's about, isn't it, Miss Saraswati? It's really about that, isn't it? That we do things one way and ISKCON does things a different way. We're not
Well,
talking.
I was just wondering because, I don't know, it just came to his mind, why do we do it this way and why they don't do it that way? I guess, I don't know.
Well, I answered that. I mean, I just think that Prabhupada established things one way, and maybe Guru Maharaj, following Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, followed the way he taught him. So that's why.
I mean, we also sing the Gaura Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati song in the evening, right? Do they do that in like ISKCON? That one?
No, I don't believe they do. But when I was with Srila Prabhupada, when he was leaving in Vrindavan, they did sing this prayers to Srila Saraswati Thakur. They did sing in that situation. For some reason, they did sing Prabhupada Stavaka, They sang that in the evening. But in all the other time it was in ISKCON, I never heard them singing Prabhupada Stavaka. But, things were different. Things, like for instance, I was talking about other differences. In the morning for Mangalarti used to be the Samsara prayers. In ISKCON, that would be Mangalarti. But Guru Maharaj said, well, we sing what's on our altar, to who's on our altar. So also on our altar, we have Mahaprabhu and we have Radha Govinda. So we're singing, Kali Kur, then, or at midday, we're just singing,
Yasomati Nandan.
Yasomati Nandan, and then we sing
Jai Sachinandana.
Jai Sachinandana. And in the morning we're singing first Kali Kur. But Guru Maharaj said we're singing the songs which are of our deities on the altar. And we don't just sing samsara prayers. We sing those, actually, we do sing those, but we sing them afterwards. So afterwards, what I generally try to do is I try to sing first I sing Srila Govinda Maharaj's Arti, then Guru Maharaj's Arti, then I sing Gurvashtika, Samsara prayers, and then I sing the rest of the song. So we are singing Gurvashtika, but we're not singing it during Mangalarti. So there are some differences, right? I mean, but if somebody feels that they like the idea of chanting the Maha Mantra all together, not separating it, then maybe that person should just visit ISKCON more. Okay, we've run out of time. Is that okay for that answer to that question? Krishna Mohini, ¿no tienes pregunta? Ishanuga, ¿tienes pregunta?
No, Maharaj. Next time.
Next time, okay. Okay. You can say that my way of answering, very kind of selfish, authoritarian way, is typical of sannyasis. They have no tact in dealing with others.
Lady.
Any other questions? We're finished. Okay. Then this is our schedule. Excuse me, pardon me. This is our schedule. Our schedule is then we will schedule our time for 10:30 means 6:30 in the evening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now we've overshot our time limit, but okay. So, but I'm always thinking of London. I just had a crumpet this morning. Actually, crumpet, and every morning I take crumpet and tea. So
Very good.
and I am following the UK system, right?
Yeah.
With Marmite, Maharaj?
Today I didn't have it with Marmite. I had it instead with jalapeno cream cheese.
Well, that's not very English, Maharaj, at all.
Oh, come on.
Jalapenos? My goodness me.
Californian crumpet.
What?
That is a Californian crumpet.
No. Jalapenos are not from California. They're more a Mexico thing, right?
I mean, remember, California was once Mexico too.
No, California was part of Mexico. Mexico was never part of California.
Ya se fue la señora.
ya estaba cansado.
Where
Veía bien el proyecto.
where is Devashis again?
Yes, Maharaj.
Didn't they
Oh,
have
what
that?
happened?
They had that song. Didn't they have that song? Mexico, Mexico rules the sea. What?
Yeah, they're very famous for their navy, Mexico, aren't they?
Well, you know what Pancho Villa, he was famous for. They said, they came to a town, they said, we cannot tell who's the enemy and who's favorable and who's the enemy. Just a minute. Hello? Hello? They said, we cannot tell who's friend and who's enemy. So, what was this? I think it's Pancho Villa. He said, kill them all, let God sort them out.
Good policy.
All right, dandavats to all of you.
Dandavat, Maharaj.
I'll see you next week.
Dandava Maharaj.
Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj. Ki jai.